I think I didn't do anything wrong, just took the chance my husband wouldn't. So, when the legal documents arrived at our door, I was honestly shocked he'd go that far. After all, I was only doing what I thought was best for my career. If anything, he should have supported me instead of making himself the victim. The apartment felt smaller every evening when I came home to Calvin's questioning eyes. Tonight was no different as I set down my purse and the new company phone Damien had given me during our work dinner. "You're 3 hours late, Evadne," Calvin said from the kitchen table, where he was grading papers. His voice carried that familiar tone of disappointment that I'd grown tired of hearing. "It's called networking, Calvin. Maybe if you understood how the corporate world actually works, you'd appreciate what I'm doing for our family." I kicked off my heels and headed straight for the wine cabinet. The Pinot Grigio Damiens had recommended was becoming my go-to stress reliever. "Networking until 10 p.m., with just your boss." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I turned to face my husband of 8 years, this man who seemed content to grade the same essays year after year while I was actually trying to build something. Damien values my input on the quarterly projections. He specifically asked for my insights because he's considering me for the team lead position. Calvin's shoulders sagged slightly. I worry about you. These late nights are becoming regular, and Maggie keeps asking why Mommy isn't home for bedtime stories anymore. The guilt trip. Classic Calvin. Our daughter will thank me when she's older, and we can afford to send her to a better school district. Unlike some people, I'm not content to stay stagnant forever. My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen, and my stomach dropped slightly. It was from Damien. "Thanks for tonight, beautiful. Can't wait for tomorrow's project meeting." Calvin had moved closer, ostensibly to refill his coffee mug, but I caught him glancing at my phone. His face went pale. "Who was that?" he asked quietly. "Work stuff. God, Calvin, you're becoming paranoid." I clutched the phone tighter and headed toward our bedroom. I'm exhausted from actually working hard all day. But as I closed the bedroom door behind me, I didn't notice Calvin quietly taking out his own phone and snapping a photo of my screen, which I'd carelessly left face up on the kitchen counter while getting my wine. The next morning, my sister Harriet called while I was getting ready for work. "How's the new position shaping up?" she asked, her voice bright with excitement. "Really well. Damien, that's my boss. He's been giving me more responsibilities. Last night we had dinner to discuss strategy." "Good for you. Everyone flirts a little to get ahead. It's just smart business." Harriet always understood me in ways Calvin never could. She'd married Thomas, who supported her ambitions instead of questioning them constantly. "Exactly. Calvin doesn't get it. He thinks I should be home every night making casseroles or something." Men can be so insecure. You're finally getting the recognition you deserve. But when Calvin's mother Anna called later that morning, her tone was entirely different. "Evadne, dear, I hope you don't mind me asking, but Calvin seemed quite upset at Sunday dinner. Are things all right between you two?" I forced sweetness into my voice. "Everything's fine, Anna. Calvin's just adjusting to me having more responsibility at work. It's just that he mentioned you've been working very late hours, and little Maggie." "I have to go, Anna. Work calls." I hung up before she could finish. Calvin's family had never fully accepted me, always treating me like I wasn't good enough for their precious son. Now they were probably gossiping about me behind my back. That evening, Calvin was waiting for me again, but this time he had a different expression, more resigned than angry. "We need to talk," he said. "About what now?" He held up a receipt. "This hotel charge on our joint account, from last Tuesday, when you said you were at the office late." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "That was for the off-site training I told you about. Damien booked it for the whole team." "The whole team?" "Yes, Calvin, the whole team. Why would you even question that?" But even as I said it, I could see in his eyes that he didn't believe me anymore. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice wondered if maybe I was pushing too far. But Damien had hinted that the promotion announcement was coming soon, and I was so close to everything I'd worked for. I couldn't let Calvin's insecurities ruin this for me. The regional office felt different after hours. The fluorescent lights cast everything in a softer glow, and the usual bustle of phone calls and keyboard clicking gave way to an intimate quiet that I'd grown to love. Damien and I were alone again, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports, but our conversation had drifted to more personal territory. "You know, Evadne, I've always admired your dedication," Damien said, leaning back in his leather chair. At 47, he had the kind of confidence that came with authority, salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished, and a way of making me feel like the most important person in the room. "I just want to prove myself worthy of the team lead position," I replied, aware that I was sitting closer to his desk than necessary. "Oh, you've already proven that." His smile was warm, maybe too warm for a boss speaking to an employee. "Your husband is lucky to have such an ambitious woman." My phone buzzed. Calvin again. The text read, "Where are you? Maggie's asking for you." I quickly typed back, "Stuck in traffic, home soon." "Everything okay?" Damien asked, noticing my distraction. "Just Calvin being... Calvin. He doesn't understand what it takes to succeed in this business." "Well, I certainly appreciate your commitment. Not everyone would stay this late to perfect their presentations." When I finally got home at nearly midnight, Calvin was waiting in the living room, still fully dressed. "Traffic must have been terrible," he said, his voice flat. "You have no idea. Complete standstill on the highway." The lie came so easily now. "And before you start, yes, I know it's late, but Damien specifically requested my input on the Morrison account. He values my work, Calvin. He sees my potential." "Your potential." "Yes, my potential. Something you seem to have forgotten I have." Calvin stood up slowly. "I called the highway department. There were no traffic incidents tonight." My chest tightened, but I forced a laugh. "Oh, so now you're checking up on me. This is exactly what I mean, Calvin. You're being controlling and paranoid. No wonder I prefer being at the office." "Evadne, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to understand why my wife is lying to me." "I'm not lying. God, you're so insecure. Damien was right. He said some husbands can't handle their wives' success." The moment the words left my mouth, I realized I'd said too much. Calvin's face went white. He talks to you about me?" "It came up in conversation. He was just being supportive, unlike some people." The next day, Harriet met me for lunch at our usual cafe downtown. "You look radiant," she said, stirring her latte. "This job is really agreeing with you. Damien's been incredible. He's teaching me so much about leadership, about what it takes to really succeed." I couldn't help smiling. "Last night we worked until almost midnight on strategy." "Wow, he's really invested in your development." "Exactly. Calvin doesn't see it that way, of course. He's been questioning everything, my hours, my dedication. Yesterday he actually accused me of lying about traffic." Harriet rolled her eyes. "Thomas went through a phase like that when I started getting more responsibility. It's just male ego. They can't handle when we start outshining them." But later that afternoon, Calvin's sister Linda called me at work. "Evadne, I need to ask you something directly. Are you having an affair?" The directness caught me off guard. "Linda, I can't believe you'd even..." "Because Calvin is falling apart. He's not eating, he's not sleeping. Whatever's going on, it's destroying him." "What's going on is that your brother can't handle having a successful wife. Maybe instead of attacking me, you should encourage him to have some ambition of his own." "This isn't about ambition, Evadne. This is about you staying out until midnight with your boss and lying about it." I hung up on her. Calvin's family had always been dramatic, but this was too much. That Friday, our office was having drinks at the downtown bistro. I'd convinced Calvin to join us, thinking maybe if he met my colleagues, He'd understand how professional everything was. It was a mistake. Damien arrived 20 minutes after Calvin and I did, making his way directly to our table with the kind of presence that commanded attention. He was wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Calvin made in a month. "Evadne," he said warmly, placing his hand on my shoulder as he leaned down to kiss my cheek, a gesture that lingered just a moment too long. "You look stunning tonight." I felt Calvin tense beside me, but I smiled brightly. "Damien, I'd like you to meet my husband, Calvin." Damien extended his hand with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The famous Calvin. Evadne talks about you all the time." "Does she?" Calvin's handshake was firm, but I could see the confusion in his face. "Oh yes, she's always mentioning how supportive you are of her career ambitions." Damien's tone was perfectly pleasant, but there was something underneath it that made me uncomfortable. As the evening progressed, Damien made sure to sit next to me, buying me expensive cocktails and including me in conversations, while Calvin sat largely ignored. When Damien made a joke about after-hours dedication, placing his hand on my knee under the table, I didn't move away fast enough. Calvin saw everything. "I think we should go," he said quietly during a lull in conversation. "Already? But Damien was just telling us about the new client prospects. Now, Evadne." The drive home was silent until Calvin finally spoke. "He was touching you." He was being friendly. "That's how business relationships work, Calvin. Not everyone communicates through grading papers and faculty meetings." "Friendly?" "Evadne, he had his hand on your leg." "You're being ridiculous. And honestly, you embarrassed me tonight. Everyone could see how uncomfortable and jealous you were acting." But that night, after Calvin thought I was asleep, I heard him moving around quietly in the kitchen. Through the crack in our bedroom door, I saw him photographing something. Papers, receipts, I couldn't tell what. A chill ran down my spine, but I pushed the feeling away. Calvin was just being paranoid, like always. He'd calmed down once he realized how important this promotion was for our family's future. He had to. The downtown bistro buzzed with Friday night energy as our group claimed the large corner table. I'd been looking forward to this dinner all week, a chance to show Calvin how respected I was among my colleagues, how my career was finally taking off. Maybe seeing me in my element would help him understand why I'd been working such long hours. Calvin sat beside me, looking uncomfortable in his button-down shirt and khakis, among my more fashionably dressed co-workers. He'd made an effort. I'd give him that, but he still looked like exactly what he was. A high school English teacher trying to fit in with corporate professionals. "So, Calvin," said Jessica from accounting, "what do you think of Evadne's big promotion prospects?" "I think she's very talented," Calvin replied diplomatically. "I just hope she doesn't burn herself out with all the late nights." I felt my cheeks warm with embarrassment. "Calvin worries too much. Success requires sacrifice, right, everyone?" The table murmured agreement, but I caught a few exchanged glances. Before I could smooth things over, Damien appeared at our table like he owned the place, which, given his salary, he probably could have. "Sorry I'm late, everyone. Traffic was murder." His eyes found mine immediately. "Evadne, you look absolutely radiant tonight." He leaned down to kiss my cheek, his hand resting on my bare shoulder longer than necessary. I felt Calvin stiffen beside me, but I smiled brightly at Damien. "Thank you. You remember my husband, Calvin?" "Of course, the educator." Damien's handshake with Calvin was perfunctory at best. "Mind if I steal this seat?" Without waiting for an answer, he claimed the empty chair on my other side, effectively boxing me between him and Calvin. As the evening progressed, Damien dominated the conversation with stories of client victories and market strategies. He had a way of making everyone feel included, while somehow making it clear that he and I were the real players at the table. When he ordered a bottle of expensive wine for the table, he made sure to fill my glass personally. "Evadne's been invaluable on the Morrison account," he announced to the group. Her insights have been absolutely brilliant. I don't know what I'd do without her. I glowed under the praise, acutely aware of how different this felt from Calvin's quiet, understated support. This was recognition, appreciation for my actual contributions. She's always been smart, Calvin said quietly. Smart doesn't begin to cover it, Damien replied, his hand briefly touching my wrist. She's got instincts you can't teach, natural talent. I noticed Calvin's jaw tighten, but honestly, his jealousy was becoming embarrassing. Couldn't he see this was about professional respect? Calvin teaches high school English, I said, trying to include him in the conversation. Same kids, same curriculum, year after year. Very stable. The way I said stable made it sound like a limitation rather than a virtue, and I saw Calvin flinch slightly. But Damien laughed. Stability has its place, I suppose. Though I've always been drawn to people who crave more excitement, more challenge. His eyes met mine meaningfully. People who aren't afraid to take risks. Exactly, I agreed, perhaps too enthusiastically. Some people are content with predictability, but I need growth, advancement, new experiences. Calvin was staring at his barely touched dinner, and I felt a flicker of guilt. But then Damien leaned closer to me, ostensibly to hear something Jessica was saying across the table, and his cologne filled my senses. This was what success smelled like: expensive, confident, powerful. I should probably head home soon, Calvin said during a lull in conversation. Early morning tomorrow. Weekend grading? I asked, not bothering to hide my eye roll. See what I mean, everyone? While we're out networking and building relationships, Calvin's got papers to grade. A few people chuckled, but I caught Thomas, Harriet's husband, looking uncomfortable. Calvin's face had gone pale. Actually, I'm helping coach the debate team tomorrow. The kids are competing at state level. How nice, Damien said with barely concealed dismissal. Well, we certainly appreciate you letting us borrow a Vadin so often. Not every husband would be so understanding about the long hours. There was something in his tone that made the comment feel loaded, almost like an inside joke between us. I should have deflected, should have changed the subject, but the wine had made me bold. Calvin's learning to adjust, I said with a laugh that sounded brittle even to my ears. It's been an adjustment for both of us, honestly, going from a quiet little domestic routine to real career excitement. Calvin stood up abruptly. I think I'll head home. Already? But we haven't even ordered dessert. You stay. Enjoy your excitement. His voice was steady, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I'll see you at home. After he left, the mood at the table shifted slightly. Damien smoothly changed the subject to upcoming projects, but I felt unsettled by the way Calvin had looked at me before walking away. Everything okay? Jessica asked quietly. Oh, he's fine. Just tired. Teaching teenagers all day would exhaust anyone. I forced a bright smile. More wine, anyone? But later that night, when I finally got home around 2 a.m., Damien had insisted on giving me a ride, and we'd ended up talking in his car for over an hour. I found Calvin sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread in front of him. Working late? I asked, trying to sound casual. Something like that. He looked up at me, and his expression was unreadable. Good evening. Very productive. Damien thinks the Morrison account could lead to even bigger opportunities. I kicked off my heels, suddenly exhausted. You left so early. You missed the best part of the conversation. I'm sure I did. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more carefully. The papers in front of him weren't essays or lesson plans. They looked like bank statements, receipts, printed emails. What are you working on? Just organizing some things. You should get some sleep. As I headed toward the bedroom, I heard him quietly shuffling the papers together. But not before I glimpsed what looked like a hotel receipt. The same hotel where Damien and I had met for our off-site training session last week. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to keep walking. Calvin was just being paranoid again, collecting random paperwork to fuel his jealous suspicions. He'd calm down once he realized how ridiculous he was being. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the image of his face at dinner. Not angry or jealous, but sad. Deeply, quietly sad. I pushed the feeling away. This was about my career, my future, my dreams. Calvin would understand eventually. He had to. The penthouse overlooked the city like a glittering kingdom, and I felt like I belonged among the crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Damien's company party was the event of the season, and I'd spent weeks planning my outfit, a sleek black dress that hugged my curves and made me feel powerful, successful, worthy of being here. Calvin stood beside me at the entrance, tugging at his tie uncomfortably. I'd insisted he come as my +1, thinking it would be good for him to see this world I was entering, to understand the level I was operating on now. Evadne! Damien's voice boomed across the foyer as he approached us, arms outstretched. He looked magnificent in his tailored tuxedo, every inch the successful executive. You look absolutely breathtaking. His hand settled on my waist as he kissed both my cheeks, lingering just long enough to make it feel intimate. I was acutely aware of Calvin watching this interaction, but I smiled radiantly at Damien. This place is incredible, I said, gesturing at the opulent surroundings. Only the best for my team. Calvin, good to see you again. Damien's acknowledgement of my husband was perfunctory at best before his attention returned to me. Come, I want to introduce you to some very important people. For the next hour, Damien kept me at his side as he worked the room, his hand never far from my lower back, occasionally whispering comments in my ear that made me laugh. I felt like his partner, his equal, someone who belonged in this world of power and influence. Calvin, meanwhile, stood awkwardly by the bar, making stilted conversation with other spouses who'd been similarly abandoned. I caught glimpses of him throughout the evening, always alone, always watching me with that same sad expression I'd been seeing more and more lately. Your husband seems like a nice man, commented Margaret from HR when we found ourselves at the same cocktail table. He is, I replied automatically, then felt compelled to add, though he's still adjusting to my career taking off, it's been a big change for both of us. Margaret nodded knowingly. My ex-husband had trouble with my success too. Some men just can't handle strong women. The conversation was interrupted when Damien appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. Ladies, I hope you don't mind if I steal Evadne for a moment. There's someone she absolutely must meet. His hand settled possessively on my waist as he guided me away, and I felt a thrill of importance. This was what success felt like. Being chosen, being valued, being seen as essential. You're absolutely glowing tonight, Damien murmured as we walked toward a group of senior executives. You belong here, you know that? Thank you, I whispered back, acutely aware of how close he was standing, how his fingers pressed against the silk of my dress. After tonight, I think we'll have some very good news to discuss, about your future with the company. My heart raced. The promotion, finally. But as we approached the executive group, I caught sight of Calvin across the room. He was standing alone by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city lights, and something about his posture, the slump of his shoulders, the way he held his drink without drinking it, made my chest tighten with guilt. Excuse me for just a moment, I told Damien, and made my way over to Calvin. Hey, I said softly, touching his arm. You okay? He turned to look at me, and his eyes were tired. Fine, just taking in the view. It's incredible, isn't it? This is the kind of world I'm entering, Calvin. This is what all those late nights have been building toward. I can see that. There was something in his tone that made me defensive. You could try to look a little happier for me. This is a big night. For you, yes, it definitely seems to be. Before I could ask what he meant by that, Damien appeared beside us. Sorry to interrupt, but the mayor just arrived, and I promised I'd introduce him to my star employee. His hand found the small of my back again, and I felt Calvin tense beside me. "Of course," I said, excitement overriding my concern about Calvin's mood. "Calvin, I'll be back in a few minutes." But a few minutes turned into an hour as Damien paraded me around the party, introducing me to city officials, major clients, board members. I felt intoxicated by the attention, the respect, the clear message that I was being elevated to a new level within the company. When I finally looked around for Calvin, I found him in the corner with our 6-year-old daughter Maggie, who'd been staying with Anna for the evening, but had apparently been brought over. "Mommy!" Maggie ran to me and I scooped her up, suddenly aware that I'd been neglecting my family all evening. "What are you doing here, sweetheart?" "Grandma Anna brought me because I missed you. You haven't been home for bedtime stories in forever." The accusation in her innocent voice stung. "Mommy's been working very hard, baby. It's all for you, to make sure we can give you nice things." "I don't want nice things. I want bedtime stories." Calvin appeared at my side, gently taking Maggie from my arms. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's let Mommy get back to her party." "Calvin, wait." But he was already walking toward the exit, carrying our daughter, not looking back. I stood there for a moment, feeling strangely hollow despite the success of the evening. Around me, the party continued in full swing, but something felt wrong. "Everything all right?" Damien appeared beside me with another glass of champagne. "Fine, just family stuff." "Well, don't let it bring you down. Tonight is about celebrating you, about your future." His hand settled on my hip, and this time I noticed how intimate the gesture was, how it would look to anyone watching. "Damien, maybe we should..." "Should what?" "Evadne, you're on the verge of everything you've worked for. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for succeeding." He was right, of course. I'd worked too hard to let Calvin's insecurities derail my progress now. But later that night, when I finally got home at nearly 3 a.m., Damien had insisted on driving me, and we'd sat in his car talking about my promotion prospects. I found Calvin still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. "Late night," he observed without looking up. "Very productive. Damien thinks the promotion announcement will come next week." I kicked off my heels, suddenly exhausted. "Where's Maggie?" "Sleeping, at my mother's. She was upset when we left the party." Guilt twisted in my stomach. I was networking, Calvin, building relationships that will benefit our whole family. "Right, networking." There was something different in his voice tonight. Not anger, not hurt, but something colder. More resolved. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Evadne, just nothing." He closed the laptop and stood up, and for the first time in months, he didn't try to discuss my behavior or ask about my evening. He just walked past me toward the bedroom, pausing only to say, "There's some mail for you on the counter. Came today." After he disappeared into the bedroom, I looked at the mail he'd mentioned. Most of it was bills and advertisements, but there was one official-looking envelope that made my blood run cold. It was from a law firm. With shaking hands, I opened it to find a formal notice of separation proceedings, citing irreconcilable differences and breakdown of marital trust. Calvin was divorcing me. I stood in the kitchen at 3 a.m., still wearing my party dress, holding papers that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice whispered that maybe I'd pushed too far, crossed too many lines, hurt the one person who'd always been on my side. But I pushed that voice away. This was Calvin being dramatic, trying to control me through threats and legal action. He'd calmed down. He had to, didn't he? The law offices of Silverman and Pratt occupied the entire 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, all mahogany panels and leather-bound books designed to project authority and competence. I'd never imagined I'd be sitting here, facing Calvin across a polished conference table, while lawyers shuffled through papers that apparently documented the destruction of my marriage. "Mrs. March," said Calvin's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Silverman, "your husband has asked for this meeting to present you with the evidence he's compiled regarding your extramarital relationship." Alleged extramarital relationship, I corrected, my voice steadier than I felt. Calvin has been paranoid and controlling for months. This is just his way of trying to manipulate me into giving up my career. Calvin sat quietly beside his lawyer, looking more composed than I'd seen him in weeks. Gone was the hurt, jealous husband I'd grown accustomed to dismissing. In his place sat a man who'd clearly made some difficult decisions. "Let's review the documentation," Ms. Silverman said, opening a thick binder. "First, we have text messages." She slid a series of printed screenshots across the table. My stomach dropped as I recognized them, messages between Damien and me that I'd thought were private, secure, deleted. "Thanks for tonight, beautiful. Can't wait for tomorrow's project meeting. You looked incredible today. Couldn't concentrate on anything but you. Wish your husband wasn't so suspicious. Makes our meetings complicated. Calvin, how did you—" I started, but he held up a hand. "You left your phone face down on the counter multiple times. I photographed the messages before you deleted them." My face burned with embarrassment and anger. "You violated my privacy. You can't use those—" "Actually, Mrs. March," Ms. Silverman interrupted, "text messages on a shared phone plan are admissible evidence in divorce proceedings, especially when they pertain to adultery." She continued turning pages. "Next, we have financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, all highlighted and organized with meticulous precision. The hotel charges I'd claimed were for team training, restaurant bills for expensive dinners that supposedly included multiple colleagues, but only showed charges for 2 people. Even parking receipts that placed me at locations I'd lied about. Calvin, this is insane. You've been spying on me, collecting evidence like some kind of detective." "I've been protecting myself and our daughter," he said quietly. "After months of lies, I realized I needed documentation." "Lies? I was building my career. Everything I did was for our family's future." Ms. Silverman slid another set of documents across the table. "These are statements from your coworkers who witnessed inappropriate behavior at company functions." I scanned the pages with growing horror. Jessica from accounting describing how Damien's hands wandered during conversations with me. The bartender from the downtown bistro noting how we'd sat very close and spoken in intimate whispers. Even the parking garage attendant at Damien's building, who'd seen me leaving his car at unusual hours. "You interviewed my coworkers?" I was incredulous. "Calvin, this is stalking behavior." "I hired a private investigator," he said calmly. "After I realized the extent of your deception, I needed professional help documenting everything." "A private investigator?" My voice cracked. "You hired someone to follow me." Ms. Silverman opened another section of the binder. "Which brings us to the photographic and video evidence. The first photo showed Damien and me leaving a hotel hand in hand. The second caught us in his car at 2 a.m., his hand on my face. But it was the dashcam footage that shattered me, video after video of Damien dropping me off at odd hours, kissing me goodnight, while my husband's car recorded everything." "Calvin, I can explain." "Can you?" His voice was calm but cold. "Explain the lies, the hotel charges, the late-night calls, the way you humiliated me." "I never meant for it to go this far," I whispered. "It was about work, about the promotion." "By sleeping with your boss?" There was no answer, just silence and evidence. His lawyer spoke next. "Given the proof of adultery, Mr. March will be seeking primary custody and spousal support." "Primary custody?" I choked. "You can't take Maggie from me." "She already cries for you every night," Calvin said. "She dreams you won't come home." I begged, offering to quit, to fix it, to try. But his voice stayed steady. "It's too late. I can't trust you anymore." When he stood to leave, I asked, "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the night you called me insecure in front of your coworkers," he said. "Maybe since the first lie about working late." Then he walked out, leaving me alone with the divorce papers and the truth. I'd traded love, family, and trust for a fantasy that never meant anything. and lost everything that did. The family court felt like a tomb, cold, echoing, and merciless. I sat beside my overworked lawyer while Calvin's team laid out a mountain of evidence: texts, photos, hotel receipts, witness statements. Every detail of my affair laid bare. Dr. Martinez, Maggie's psychologist, sealed my fate. "The child shows signs of abandonment anxiety," she said gently. "She draws her father as the main caregiver. She misses her mother, but fears she won't come back." When it was my turn, I tried to explain that I'd been chasing a promotion for our family, for Maggie's future. Judge Chen cut me off. "At what cost? Your child's stability, her sense of safety?" I had no answer. Calvin spoke quietly, describing bedtime stories, tearful nights, and a 6-year-old waiting by the window for a mother who never came home. "I'm not trying to punish her," he said. "I'm trying to protect our daughter." The ruling came swiftly. Calvin got primary custody. I got supervised visits, child support payments, and the privilege of rebuilding trust I'd shattered. Afterward, Calvin said softly, "This isn't revenge, Evaden. It's consequences." He left with his mother, toward the life I'd thrown away. In the silence that followed, I realized the truth. I hadn't lost everything today. I'd lost it months ago, one lie at a time, believing I was climbing higher while I was already falling. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.